Alrighty, this is the last video in the series, and I wanted to cover something else that we've been mentioning throughout the series here and there. I've sprinkled it a couple of times, but we have not had a chance to explore it, discuss it, and really understand what I'm talking about. It's the idea of chains. Chains are the mechanism that drive what you're actually seeing with this execution that I've been describing. Now, we've been talking about how to do customizations hooking into the execution, but what we're actually doing is hooking into links in a chain. There's a deep chaining system that's available as part of what's going on with the library. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my, not settings there, but if I go into the console, open up my settings, I'm going to turn off my preserve log, and I'm going to reload the page. We're starting fresh. I wiped out all the code that we've written so far, all the CSS, template, and JavaScript stuff, because I want to show you how this whole system actually works. From the Klevu object, it is a function. You pass in these options and eventually it gets merged in. This drives this thing called settings. It's all these settings, configuration. You'll see it, you'll understand it. It's very straightforward. However, if I keep going, there's a search object. It has things like base. This is the base object that the themes clone when they are creating, the instance of quick search, or when they're creating the instance of landing or catnav or recommendations or whatnot. Extra search box is an array of all of the quick searches on the page. Landing is the object, the instance of base. That's the modified version for the search result landing page. Quick is the main, it's the first quick search that was registered on the page. So, and then there's this extra one. Extra one is there's a feature where inside of our admin, you can enable it where you can turn on a search input on the search page. That one is referred to as extra. But every single one of these instances, including the base, once you actually have it, so I'm going to go to landing because we're looking at the search result landing page, and this is going to, I think, illustrate the best. If I hit enter, it has all of these things. It has these helper functions for what you can do with an instance of the base object. So you can build the data and you can get cache. So there's caching built into the system. But there's this function called getScope. The instance is merged every time, like I was telling you before in previous videos. Every time that the trigger happens, all of these things get reran. If we were to do this the wrong way, we would add to the memory that the browser is utilizing every single time that we would re-render, remake a new request, reprocess the response, do all of these things, all these event handlers. Like every single time that you change something, you're rerunning all those event handlers? Yes. But because of the way that we're doing it, it's not adding on. It's always tied back to the original object. There's only one object. When you do the activation, there's only one landing object. And so because of the getScope, that's how we can get a reference to that object in a particular kind of way to where we can have a clean instance of that particular instance. I don't know how to explain it, but getScope is how you get the real instance of that thing. So that's a function that's available to the instance of landing. It's also available to the other things. There's this get webhook settings, init. You can reset the data as opposed to building the data. And then there's all this other kind of stuff. But getScope is the magic one. So I'm going to pull that back up. And then now I'm going to say getScope. If I look at that, this This thing is cache, chains. There's a chaining system, the caching system. There's a currency system. There's all of the data. This is the data that you get when you say modify request and then you pass in a function. Data and scope. Data is this data. This is that data. So, and scope, scope is landing. That's the reason why you can get to this get scope. There's an alias for it called kscope. That's part of what's on this element. Don't ask me about it, but you'll see it in the code. It just is what it is. There's references to all kinds of stuff. But again, it's part of the magic of making sure that we do not have memory leaks. It's part of the magic of trying to keep this interface as small and as lean as possible, even though it feels like we're overdoing it. We're really not. This is the most efficient library that I've seen in a really, really long time, especially with having so much flexibility and so much power. But it's because of these little things like this get scope and these references to things. So anyway, so data is important. Element, that is the main object. It's always an input, whether it's on the page or not. But there's always an input, which is part of what every search object is required to have. So the search result landing page doesn't actually have a search input that you could see, but there is one that was created and it's referenced in memory. And then it has things like data. And look at that. It's the same data, but it's not a duplicate. It's a reference to. It's really important. Like you can get into an infinite loop. That's the reason or the power of get scope. That's what gets you out of that infinite loop. Because you can't, if I was making a merged copy of this thing, it can't merge the result of the thing. All it can do is just try to grab a copy of the reference to the function definition. And at that point, it stops right there. It's the get scope that if we didn't have that and that was an object, then because of all the references, you would get into an infinite loop over and over and over and over, and the thing would just balloon out of control. This is the stopgap. This is the thing that stops it from getting out of control. But anyway, then here's like that context, the local overrides, the request, the response, all of that stuff is in the data that's part of element, but it's also the thing that's inside of the data that's next to the element. There it is, context, local overrides, request, response, scope, and it just keeps going on and on and on and on because it's the same references to the thing. Then there's something called kdata. There's something called kelement. Kelement, which is an input, which there was an input there. It has a data, and it's the same thing again. It's like it just keeps going on and on and on. But they're references. But because all of this does not exist unless you get past this one function, that's what stops it from getting out of control. It's really weird. Well, the first time I saw this, it did not make sense to me. But after years of playing with this, just trust and believe, it makes sense. And there's a reason for it to be this way. But this kscope thing, it's a reference to what you would normally get when you get, so for example, let me go back. Back. So again, if you look at landing get scope, so we call the function to return the instance of landing, the actual instance of landing, and then we get all this stuff. There is this element off of get scope. Off of that, close all this up, there is a kscope. Kscope is the reference back to the return thing of what get scope would have gotten you. So if I look at that, cache, chains, currency, etc., 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 etc. It has an element. That has a kscope. It has an element. It has a kscope. And it goes on and on and on and on. Again, that would be an infinite loop if it wouldn't have been for that stopgap at the very beginning. But anywho, I digress. Chains. was the thing that I wanted to show you guys. So every instance of the thing has this chaining system. The chaining system is just an object that is holding the chains that exist for this instance. So landing has different chains that have been built for its instance in comparison to something like klevu.search.quick.getScope.chains. This one looks similar, but it's not the same as this one. So they both have template, they both have response, they both have requests, they both have processors, they both have events, they both have actions, but they're not the same. If I look at actions for here, I've got do search. If I look for actions here, I got do search. If I look for events, I've got focus, key up, and submit. This is, again, for quick. If I look at events for this one, I also have focus, key up, and submit. If I look at processors, I've got input string. If I look over here at processors, I also have input string. If I look at template, and I look at this template, I've got events, handle, event, process, and render. Events, process, render. They look almost the same because the structure of the chains are the same. However, every single one of these chains, so if I say, let's say we're going to look at, I don't know, template dot process dot success. Every single one of these chains, so this whole entire path gets me to this particular chain. It's located in the category, in the object of template, and then inside of it, there's something called process, and inside of it, there's something called success. And then you get to these functions: add, add after, add before, empty, fire, get data, get scope, has data, has scope, index of, list, move, rename, remove. There's all of these functions. These are how you manipulate or how you interact with the interface that every single chain has. And the part that makes them different is if I list, and it's a function, all those things that I just showed you, they were all functions. If I say list for quick, what chains, template, process, success looks like, it's going to give me an array of 10 things. If I do the exact same thing, but I change this to landing, so now it's Klevu search landing, give me that instance, look at the chains, look at template, process, success, and list those. It's got 12. Now let's take it one step further. Let's see what the chains, the links, I call them links. What are the links in the chain? There is a process currency setting. Then there's a validate result set for promotional banner. I don't have that one here. I've got something called process filters for landing. There's append banners. Nope. There's something called append landing banners. It's similar but different. Update product image path. Update product image path. That one's similar. Yeah, it looks the same, but it's like number 7 in the list. Or over here, it's number 3, and so on and so forth. They're not the same links, even though the chain sounds the same. It's almost like if you think about if it was like a Christmas tree, and it's like there's a cookie cutter Christmas tree that everybody gets. Same branches, same girth of the trunk, same all of that stuff, but the ornaments in your tree, how you decorated your tree, is different than how I decorated my tree and the ornaments that I have in my tree. I might have bigger ornaments, but less of them. You might have smaller ornaments, but more of them. You might have things that, do this, do that, and so on and so forth. Let's take another example. Let's say if I took a look at quick again, and this time let's go back to the chains and say, this time let's look at events dot let's see, key up. And then here's all those functions again. Add after, add before, empty, fire, so on and so forth. But there's list. Let's list those. And we've got 6 of them. Let's do the same thing, this time for landing. It only has 3. The key up event, this is just letting you know the kinds of events that are in here. Remember I was showing you in my little diagram up here? There's some trigger. It could be the key up event if it's like an input or, that kind of thing. It might be the page load on some other things. It might be, just whatever the trigger happens to be. It could be a filter being clicked on. It could be, any number of things. But I just want to make it clear that some of those things are kind of like built into the system. And here it is when it comes to the key up event. So if I open this up, we have is character not allowed, scroll to top, and do search. This is for landing. Now, mind you, I have no input field for landing. This input field is actually the quick search. This is not the input that's associated with so these key ups, whatever this is, has nothing to do with this box up here, even though it is on the search result landing page. But think of this as being like the header on your site. Like that's not, it's, Like it's not the content that's specific to the page that you're on. It's the content that's globally there on every page of the website. And that's where our quick lives. So if I look at quick, it has similar things. It has is character not allowed. Okay. But then this one has a key up delay. This one doesn't. Then it has a validate key up delay. This one doesn't. Then it has a scroll to top. Okay, we've got that one. Then there's an add search box status class. That one doesn't have it. And then it does the do search. Let's take another link in the chain. Let's go to chains dot, I don't know. Let's look at response dot success. And yep, here we go. All the functions. I'll go to list them out. Now this is for landing, and I'm going to change it and take a look at quick. It's got 11. There's more on quick than there is on landing. However, when you look at them, check for success. Okay, we both have that. Execute Ajax response processor. Okay, we both have that. Add response data suggestion. Yep, we both got that. Add response data query. Yep, we both got that. Process suggestions. Yep, process query. But this one has match search term. This one does not. Then we've got execute template render processor. Then we've got render template. Then add events and stop loader. So very, very, very similar as far as the names. That does not mean that the code inside of them is the same. So now that I've explained a little bit about the fact that these chains exist, there's links in the chain, but even though the structure of where those chains are looks the same on all the instances of the themes, it does not mean that the links are exactly the same. So one of the things that I want to be able to do is just let's take a look at one of the links in the chain, because it always looks like this. There's a position, it's an array. There's a position, there's a name, and then there's a function. And look at the function. It's data and scope. It's the same thing that modify request has. It's the same thing that after template render has. It's the same thing that before activation has. Almost always, it's that data and scope function that's being called. If I open that up, I can actually go see where that code is. And because I'm running the debug functions, if I click on it, it opens up source, it opens up that file, and it takes me to that code. Now I can see exactly what's actually happening, and I can start to diagnose what's going on. Now, take a look at the way that this thing was done. Originally, there was something called a base search, get scope, very similar, get scope. Then there's chains, response, success. This time it's not list, it's called add. You add an object. The object has to have a name and it has to have a fire. The fire is a function that is data and scope. From there, you can do things like scope, k element data equals this, and if this, that, and the other, then return false, and all this other kind of stuff. Now, one of the cool things about chains that you can't do inside of modify request, modify response, after template render, and all that kind of stuff, like you can get to the data and you can do things, but what you can't do is you can't stop the chain. When a link in a chain, so this added the check for success link into the chain of the response success, chain, I guess, whatever. That's that function. With chains, if you return false, it will typically stop the chain at that link. It's a way to kind of exit out, almost like if you threw a break inside of a for loop inside of JavaScript or something. It would stop it. It would quit out of that, not just the iteration of that one link. It will actually stop the entire chain. So if any of these said return false, then the subsequent events would not happen. And usually the way that the system works is that this chain is something that's happening at some point in time, and this might have been called by a link in a completely different chain. And so this chain might actually at some point call a different chain. And then all of a sudden that chain starts running through its links. And that's how this whole entire system is kind of put together by all these intertwining links and chains that have to do with, so for example, like, I know I can't even draw this, but I'm going to try, right? So we've got this one chain that happens to have all these links in it, right? And then this could have been the chain that was happening when the activation happened. And part of this one link in this one chain is to go populate the things for another chain. It might have added things to the chain. It might have removed things from the chain. It might have replaced things in the chain. But this particular chain at some point in time might stop, and then that's when you continue on to the next link in the first chain. Or one of these links might call a different chain. And then it just kind of keeps going until that one. And then this one might have a link that calls yet another chain. So it's chains within chains within chains, the same way that we have templates within templates within templates. The only two that are disconnected from directly touching another chain is request and response. When we send out a request, we try to identify something about that request object that was sent out, and we try to match it and whenever we receive a response so that we can put this arrow in between. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it. It wouldn't be there. There really isn't, let me stop that. That really isn't there. So the chain stops at sending the request. Then hopefully we're going to catch it on the response, match it up with this one so that we understand that this belongs together. And then we continue on. But everything from here, from once we get that response all the way to the very end of the last link of the last chain, they are all connected. They are absolutely connected. Like this. And same thing from the beginning, from when that trigger happens, all the way to making that request. But at that point, that's the one asynchronous thing that we have no control over, and it's just whenever it comes back, we'll catch it in the response chain. So there is a response chain, there is a request chain, and there's all the things, the events and the actions and whatnot that could trigger the the beginning of the chain to start, making a request again. Part of what we're doing with the built-in post-event things that are firing after the template has rendered is doing things like adding things to for example, the same way that we did adding a click event to the badge button that we did in the previous video. The filters themselves, let's actually take a look at that real quick. Klevu.search.landing.getScope.chains.template. Oops, I misspelled it. Template.events.list. 21 things. But somewhere in here, there's an init slider filter. So the price slider that happens to be down here, that gets initialized by this link in this chain. Let's see, there's attach filter tag events. Filter tags, I believe, are whenever you activate a filter, we call these, well, this one happens to be a tag, so it's called tag, but these are called, this little section up here, we call these tags. That gets initialized. The functionality, the events triggered to this button and all that kind of good stuff. All of that happens with here. There's something called enable filter collapse. That's what this is. And let's see, here we go. Initialize filter left. If I open that and I look at its function and I click on it, it's going to take me to search result page debug, which is the same file that I happen to have open over here, but over here it's the one that's going to load up in my sources. And essentially what this does is it runs something, right? Like, so all of these is, here it is, here's chains, template, events, add. We add in an object. It has a name and a fire. The fire is the function with the data and the scope. And then essentially what we're doing is we're just firing this other function, some helper called Klevu search.modules.facets.base.attach facet items click events. And then it passes in scope.kscope, which is the exact same thing. This scope kscope is the exact same thing as if I was to say Klevu.search.landing.getScope. This thing, which is cache, chains, currency, so on, so forth, blah, 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 is the exact same thing as, if I go back to sources, scope and kscope, because scope, every single time that you pass in scope, we looked at data previously. Now I want to talk about scope. Scope, the other thing that's being passed in with this data and scope, it has a kscope, right? That is the element. Scope is the element. It's this landing thing. That's what this is. Kscope is the thing that returns the thing, but this element also has a kscope, which is what you get when you get scope, which is cache, chains, currency, data, element. Kscope is cache, chains, currency, data, element. It's the same thing. They're just references to the exact same thing. The beauty behind doing it through scope is that you don't have to worry about what the thing was actually called. I don't have to go check to see, is this thing that's executing landing? Is it catnav? Is it this, that, and the other? No, you can just go scope.kscope, and it's the same thing as if you would have known the name of the thing and called the function. It's the exact same thing. So this is just a very convenient reference that you can count on. And so this code is passing that very convenient thing. I could grab this code, go back over here, it's the same exact file, and go find that function. Here's the function. It's it's receiving that particular scope.kscope, and inside of it, it's saying, hey, Klevu, git settings, some other helper we haven't talked about. It's not a big deal, but it's kind of like git object path, very similar, except that it only works with settings. And so you get this scope settings, and then, so that's the object, and then here's the string that represents the rest of the thing. So really what you're asking for is you're asking for scope, settings, search box, target. We're going to call that target. Then we're going to go through Klevu each. We've seen that one before. And what are we going through? We're going through Klevu DOM find. This is kind of like query selector all. And we're going to basically go find all of these things, but we're using target as the reference. Like this is the starting point. So the get closest is going up the DOM. Find is going down the DOM, starting from here. So starting from the search box target, see if you can go find all of the Klevu filter options. If I come back over here and inspect these guys, these are my Klevu filter options. So I'm basically finding these. That target that it was looking for is actually all the way up here. It's this Klevu landing, but this is that Klevu target. This Klevu target element, if I go back into my source, if I look for this code in this file, because it's in here, that's the reference to the thing calling the thing. Here's where the code is actually defined. Here's where that code that we were looking at a second ago. If I put a breakpoint right there and then I re-execute, it's going to stop right there. And I just want to see what target is. Target is KObject, all this other kind of stuff. But if I come down to, where was it? Classes, class list. I think it's class list. Yeah, here we go. Class list. It has Klevu landing, Klevu target, Klevu left filters, KU search result page container. If I come back over here, Klevu landing, Klevu target, Klevu left filters, it's the same thing. So I'm using this as my starting point, and then inside of it, I'm looking for every single option. That's what that code is actually doing, right? So it's saying, hey, once you find that Klevu landing, go find all of the Klevu filter options. That way, we're looking for these Klevu options. Quick might have filters in it, but it has a completely different target. So they're isolated. That's the reason why we're scoping it, looking for the target first. Then we go find all the options. Then because it's a Klevu each, we have our index and each instance. So each value represents a filter. And then from there, it says, all right, let's attach a click event to each filter. Then we're going to have because it's just this Klevu attach, Klevu event attach is just the same as like a document.add event listener, and we're just adding a click event to it. And then from there, we're going to have our handler, which is going to get an event object. And then from there, we're just basically looking for the class list. Does it have this Klevu filter option active? Then it goes and does this other stuff and blah, 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 blah. And eventually, it's going to run this code that says something to the effect of Klevu search modules facets based fire filter analytics event. It's going to go do that. So some analytics thing is going to happen. Before that, let's see, what else is it going to do? It's going to go find the closest Klevu filter so that I can figure out what that thing is. And that's about it. That's the only thing that's actually happening when this thing gets clicked, is essentially this Klevu filter option active. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. This is the analytics one. That's the reason why the only thing that it's doing is that. I'm looking for this one. Let me find that one. I was about to say that definitely looks different. Not that one, not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Where is this one? Attach facet items, click event. Copy. Oh, there we go. I was looking for the wrong thing. So somewhere we're going to find the function definition, and here it is. This is what's also happening. So analytics, yes, we do definitely need to fire that and make sure that we're sending the analytics that a filter was clicked. We actually track for that. But this is what's actually happening. So same kind of thing. We're finding the target. We're finding all the options. We're going through. We're attaching a click event listener to it. We're doing some, some maintenance stuff, prevent the default, blah, 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 blah. But eventually we're toggling this class to be there or not be there. So if it was active, it'll turn it off and it won't be active. If it wasn't active, it will be active. Then from there, it does some other stuff. It does some other stuff. But eventually, all the way down here somewhere, we're going to fire a chain. Which one? The events key up chain. And then we're passing all this data to it. And the reason why we do that is because the key up event, even if it's on the, again, there is no input that I can see, but as we already went through those chains, there is a key up event that is tied to the input that's associated with the search result. That's the thing that actually triggers the reloading of the thing. So even though this thing was clicked, it's just a click event handler, but it's the firing of that other chain that actually starts the thing that causes the request to happen. Then that request, we're waiting for the response. Once we get the response, then we process the response. We render the template. We add more events again to the new templates that have been rendered, and then we can do all our own custom work. It's very, very, very interesting, but that's the magic of being able to do all of these chainy things. And so one of the cool things that, we've only looked at really two things with chains. We've looked at adding something to the chain, or what it looks like when you add something to the chain. And we've also looked at listing the things that are in the chain. But you can do more things, right? So like, for example, this one event, right? The initialize filter left. What if I was to do something to the effect of, let's go find it again. There it is. So this time, instead of listing the thing, I want to say I want to remove the thing. I believe that's how it works. Let's check real quick. Events remove. Yeah, it does take arguments. It looks for the position of the thing. If it's empty, blah, 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 blah. Yep. So I believe, yeah, you could, if I'm not mistaken, I think you can pass in the position of the thing that you want to remove. But I believe there's also some additional code in here for this remove, where it will look for the name of the thing. So I believe you do have to pass in an object. So let's try it. Let's go back to remove. And I'm going to, actually, you know what? I'm just going to pass in the name of the thing and just try it. And let me list it. And let's see, how many were there before? Is it still in there? Yep, it's still there. So that's not the way you do it. I think you do have to say as an object. And this is just trial and error. I mean, I can look into it, but I'm positive that this is how you do it. So you could do that. And so now when I list it, I only have 20 things. And now that now that the analytics event and whatever code that is and all these other things are still going to fire every single time that the template is re-rendered. That's what happens in events. This event chain is this. The after template render is actually something that's being dynamically added to the end of the chain. So you don't see it. You won't see if you add something using it is in this chain, but it's not being added the same way these are with a name. Because if you notice the code that we're using, we don't have a name that we're passing in for an after template render. We're just saying that we want to hook into landing or to, catnav or whatever the case might be. But now, because of this, if I was to do anything and it re-renders, this is my analytics. So let me stop that one and just hit play. But now I have no click event handler that's being attached. It did re-render. It did run through the chain. But I deleted, I erased, where's my little eraser? I erased the link that was in that chain. The chain just adjusts itself and all the positions, all the numbers, all the things change, right? And so that's how that works. Now there's other things that I can do. I can do things like, instead of removing something from the chain, I could say something like add after or add before and just pick another one. So tab content. And actually, nope, this one I know for a fact is just a string because that's what you're adding before, or sorry, adding after. And then you give whatever it is, this is going to be Juan's event. And then it has to have a fire, which is a function that takes a data and a scope. And then here I could do anything that I want. Console.log. Yay. So now, if I list, I'm back to 21 again. If I take a look at it right after tab content, now I have Juan's event. If I take a look at my console, where is it? So actually I haven't re-rendered yet, right? Because this chain fires after the templates have re-rendered. So I'd have to do something to re-render it. I messed up these. So nothing's causing these to re-render and to fire that chain like I showed you at the end. But it didn't do, I didn't do anything to remove the functionality from the tags. So if I do this, oh, sorry. This one, if I looked at the code for it, what it's really doing is triggering a click. And the click should remove the thing, but I removed the code that removes the thing. But anyway, if I hit clear all, that one's different. Now it did re-render, and sure enough, my link, my new custom link in this chain did fire. And it said, yay. Now if I reload the page, what I did in the console is not permanent. So it won't show up. It won't be there anymore. So if I want it to be permanent though, that's where before activation comes in really handy. That's where it's clutch. Klevu.before activation. Because this is something that you only need on page load. Landing and catnav. They're almost always the same. Function, data, scope. And then I go ahead and I can do what I was trying to do here, but instead of all of this, I could do scope.kscope. Then I've got access to my chains and template and so on and so forth. And so what I want to do is after tab content, I want to add my event that all it does is just say yay. Very simple. So now this time around, when I reload the page, my filters are working because I didn't remove them, but I am adding my custom event, right? So there's my yay. It already worked when it rendered the very, very, very first time. If I look, now I've got 22 links in the chain, including my custom event. But that could have been an add before on anything, on any chain, anywhere. I could have done this anywhere, any of those chains. And if you notice that those chains, links are linking the same way templates are, linking to templates and so on and so forth. So I just want to make you aware of how that all works, because it's a very, very, very big part of how we work with customizations. It's more powerful than using modify request, modify response after template render. Before activation is actually more useful, but outside of that, and granted, 9 times out of 10, those helper functions, those hook functions, these modify request, modify response after template render, they're going to do it for you. But sometimes you need to go in there and remove a link from a chain because it's doing something that you don't want to do. Something else that I forgot to mention is that if I try to add another event, so let's just say I say add instead of add after, and I get rid of this first parameter. So there's already a Juan's event that's in here. And then now I'm going to change it to say no. And then I hit enter. It's going to allow me to do it. If I take a look at the list, I still got my 22 items. But this time it added it at the end of the thing because I didn't say add after this one or add before that one or whatever. So what it did was it moved it to the end of the chain. And because there was already one with the exact same name, because again, it's doing this merging thing, because it had the same name, it removed that previous one. If I take a look at and I open it up and I look at the function, even though it's only in virtual memory, right? Like it's not in code. I didn't add it anywhere in the code, but I did add it in memory. I can reference it. I can pull it up. And this link is not the same as the previous link. If I do anything on this page, which is going to trigger the template to run the events again, like adding a filter, now it says no. So anyway, it's just really cool. I just wanted to show you these little caveats about how these links and these chains and all that stuff works, because again, you're going to bump into it in a customization, and it's very, very advanced stuff, but it's also extremely powerful. Sometimes you do want to hook into a chain in a very specific spot. Sometimes you do want to remove a link from a chain. Sometimes you want to take the code that's already in a chain, right? So like, let's say, for example, here's the code that adds this one in particular. Sometimes you might want to go ahead and just go into your, I'm just going to go into my before activation, and I'm just going to change this code to be this code, and I'm just going to get rid of all the fluffy stuff. All right, so now I'm adding a sort by limit to the same place, but now it's my version of it. Now I can change things inside of this thing. If I want, I can add some code to it. I can remove some code from it. I can change some condition. I can, do all kinds of different things. I can create my own helpers and call the helpers from inside of here. It's so awesome. All the various things that I can do. So I'm going to say console.log. Thank you for watching this series. Oops, if I could spell. And when I save that, oh, where did I put it? Hang on. It's the sort by limit chain scope. Yep, scope, kscope, chains, template, events, add, sort by limit. And it's happening. I put the code inside of a click event handler for the limit. So this code is only going to work whenever I click on one of these. And there it is. Thank you for watching this series.